JB East, better known as James Bradley. My initials are JB. I'm in the East. What a name. Here we have tonight also JB West, Jeff J. Brown, JB West. What a name. Hello, Jeff.
How are you doing, JB East?
Well, we're so far apart. I'd like to be closer. You're way out there in Normandy, and I'm way down here in New Zealand. But I'm excited what we're going to do for the audience tonight. Folks, we have breaking news. It's not baloney. The U.S. weaponized tuberculosis and mosquitoes against Russia. We're going to ask you, is this America's dirtiest war crime? And by the end of it, you'll understand why Putin had to strike the U.S. WMD biolabs in Ukraine. But first, I'd like to ask JB West, Jeff J. Brown. Hey, Jeff, why should anyone listen to you?
I am a co-founder of the Bioweapon Truth Commission. I am the curator of the Bioweapon Truth Commission Global Online Library, the largest online and free for all of the people listening out there, free online library cataloging chemical, biological warfare going back to World War I in several languages. And I'm also a U.S. certified science teacher, so I can really understand all of the science because I've taught as a science teacher.
Well, I think those are great qualifications. And folks, listen with me, and we'll see. Is this really breaking news? Has the United States, come on, really weaponized tuberculosis and mosquitoes against Russia? Could there be any dirtier war crime? And was Putin justified in going after the U.S. biolabs in Ukraine? Let's listen. You make your judgment. Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, JB East. First off, I'd like to point out to the fans out there that we have already done two outstanding exposés on Ukraine and the U.S. involvement in the WMD bioweapon labs there. One was on the connections with the Democratic Party, George Soros, the Rockefeller Foundation, Gates, military contractors, Pfizer, Moderna, the Pentagon, the CIA, et cetera. I will put that link up for you all to take a look at. And then we did another one, even more disturbing, on organ harvesting human organs in Ukraine under the aegis of the Red Cross, with Israeli doctors heavily involved. I will also put that link up there. What Russia is doing to establish war crime trials, we are now in what lawyers call the evidentiary discovery. They're gathering evidence. They're just gathering evidence. This will eventually lead to an arraignment where the Russians put this evidence in front of legal scholars or judges to decide whether it is enough to try the people involved or the organizations involved in with this evidence. And then they would have the court cases, which in this case would be the war crimes, Nuremberg 2.0. So this is 7 new slides. So this is not the same 7 slides that we put up about a month ago. These are 7 new slides with even more details, more evidentiary discovery. The first one is, we knew back in the first one that the U.S. was caught torturing psychological patients in hospitals, mental hospitals in Ukraine. That's all that's all we knew at this point. They have obviously now gone in and found more records in these hospitals that the Ukrainian Nazis could not destroy before they fled the Donbass area. And we now know that there is specifically they've got records in one laboratory in Marefa in near Kharkov, and they now know that the lady, the American named Linda Oporto Al-Haroun, who was doing the torturing. They now know that. So if you know a Linda Oporto Al-Haroun, she will undoubtedly be tried for war crimes in absentia because she was torturing mentally ill patients in Kharkov. What they have found out now is that the Pentagon funded this hospital, that it has been used and by the Pentagon since 2011, and that Al-Haroun has visited there repeatedly. So the Russians seem to feel that she was one of the ringleaders of this torture experiments. This supposed Marafa place was called a place to manufacture food additives. So it was the Pentagon was hiding behind making food additives. However, it had big underground storage facilities, powerful ventilation systems, and why, when the Russians came in towards Kharkov, if it was just for food additives, then why was the equipment rushed out of the facility in Marifa by the Ukrainian security service, which is the same thing as the CIA? So the equivalent of the CIA in Ukraine hurriedly rushed out equipment from a supposed food additive plant that is financed by the Pentagon, and a woman named Linda Oporto Al-Haroun was going there to do experiments on mentally ill patients. Now, this, of course, is what people in Nuremberg in 1946 were hanged for, and also the Helsinki Declaration of the World Medical Association. Humans cannot be used as guinea pigs, and humans cannot be given medical treatment or medical experimentation without their consent. What is really frightening, JB East, is that not only now that we know about the torture, and I will get into more about this with the mosquitoes, is they were not only doing torture, they were using highly active neuropeptides. And they were actually using these experimental neuropeptides on socially vulnerable citizens in Ukraine, causing irreversible damage to their central nervous systems. And of course, this is what people were hanged for in Nuremberg. And so what are neuropeptides? I happen to be a science teacher. I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but everybody's heard of dopamine. Dopamine is a neuropeptide. Neuropeptides are tiny little molecules, and they are very, very powerful. They're produced in the pituitary gland, and they're not measured in milligrams. They're not even measured in micrograms. They're measured in nanograms, which is billionths of a gram, and picograms, trillionths of a gram. So they're extremely powerful. Another one that a lot of people know about is oxytocin, which is what women release oxytocin for their milk to let down, to nurse their babies, and also to dilate their uterus during birth. These are very, very powerful substances, and they also produce a variety of endorphins to make you feel good. They're involved in pain. They're involved with water retention. So you tweak these and you weaponize them, and it does. And with billions and trillions of a gram, you can make somebody go crazy, or you can make them very, very ill and very, very, very sick. So we now know that this Marifa place was being used for torture and for using weaponized substances in socially disadvantaged people. So It's like an Edgar Allan Poe. It's like an Edgar Allan Poe, a short story. That was slide number one. And of course, if you're watching the green screen, I will put these up on the green screen behind me, and I will also, like I did for the first presentation with all the connections, I will actually also convert them over to PDF so that you can download them. Next is mosquitoes. This is slide number 2. We had already talked in the first presentation with connections about the Scientific Technological Center of Ukraine, STCU. It's a biological WMD biological program that the U.S. was running in Ukraine. We're specifically here talking about the P-268 project with the National University Shavenko in Kiev and Colorado State University. Now get a load of this. Colorado State University were involved in this. What the executive director of the STCU, the Scientific Technology Center of Ukraine, was not a Ukrainian. It was a guy named Andrew Hood. And he appealed to, so he will obviously also be tried in absentia in the war crime trials that the Russians will do. He appealed to the U.S. Department of State to organize researches within the project. And he was so proud of the fact that, quote, and J.B. East, I want you to listen to this, quote, he states that more than 30% of the participants are former scientists experienced in developing weapons of mass destruction. Ha ha! He's proud of that. And he told that to the U.S. Department of State. That's why you should fund me, because 30% of my scientists have experience creating weapons of mass destruction. My gosh. The objective of the project is to study viruses capable of infecting Aedes, A-E-D-E-S mosquitoes. These are very, very famous. Aedes is Greek for unpleasant, and Aedes mosquitoes are very unpleasant. They're the ones that transmit dengue, fever, Zika, yellow fever. These are nasty little brutes, and they were using and got with Colorado State University, a viral preparation was produced by the Institute in Kiev and delivered to the USA for aerobiological studies. What does that mean? That means distributing them from the air, like with drones, or like what the Japanese did and did in China, dropping insects, mosquitoes, on the population in China with Unit 731, which James and I have also talked about. And the United States did the same thing during the Korean War in 1951, dropping insects on Chinese and Koreans, biological warfare. Now get a load of this. They were the Kiev Institute was called on to produce 1 kilogram of Virodin. Well, no one's ever heard of Virodin. They just gave it a name. But what it is, remember what I just told you about neuropeptides? We don't know what Virodin is, but we know that Andrew Hood at the Scientific Technological Center of the Ukraine, working with Colorado State University, weaponized, again, neuropeptides, 1 kilogram, and you only need a few billionths or a trillionths of a gram to dramatically affect a human being. And where are they getting that? Where are they developing this secret Virodin, 1 kilogram of it, to send to Colorado State University to test it for distribution from the air? From yellow fever. So they were taking yellow fever microbes to develop neuropeptides to infect Aedes mosquitoes, to infect people with neuropeptides that are so powerful that they can either kill you, make you go crazy, or make you very, 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 very sick. We don't know, and Yellow fever is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, there was an outbreak in 2013 in Africa, and 170,000 people were infected, and 60,000 that resulted in deaths. You know, and just recently, Bill Gates released supposedly innocuous sterile mosquitoes in Florida. Oh God, it's really, really frightening. The person also at Colorado State who will undoubtedly be tried in absentia, not only Andrew Anthony Hood, but a Dr. Carlson at the Colorado State University. He will obviously also be tried in absentia for war crimes, because he is the one who would be receiving this now heretofore unknown Viroden, Viroden, to use to infect mosquitoes with in order to kill millions or harm, permanently damage the neurological circuits in humans, potentially millions and millions of them. This is also will produce Viroden from yellow fever mosquito larvae under a 316 grant from the United States National Institutes of Health. Viroden is a drug based on yellow fever mosquitoes. Oh my God. Who is the National Institutes of Health? Well, the National Institutes of Health and the Center for Disease Control are controlled by the Pentagon, the U.S. military. And what is one of those? What is one of the 22 National Institutes of Health? Anthony Fauci, who is involved in the National Institutes of Health. So we can, COVID. Oh, that's slide number 2. This is just unbelievable. I really would like to thank the Russians for doing this, because the mosquitoes seep right into Cuba. What people don't realize, there are 2 countries. No 2 countries have been more biologically attacked by the West than China and Cuba, of all places. And so they actually are going to bat for Cuba. And so slide number 3 is all about what has happened in Cuba over the years. And I strongly suggest everyone to read Six-Legged Soldiers. I even checked it out as an ebook at my Oklahoma City library, and I was living in Thailand, so you can get it by ebook. Six-Legged Soldiers by Jeffrey Lockwood. And then on the Bioweapon Truth Commission Global Online Library, a Dr. Alonso Perez, so Alonso Perez, a Cuban doctor, wrote a book, and it was translated into English, and he was nice enough to donate the English version of his book, Biological Warfare on Cuba, where he did years and years of research on this. It's free. It's a PDF. Go to www.bioweapontruth.com, and you can look up Alonso Perez, Perez, and you can download the book for free. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because Alonso did all the work, but you all need to know that in 1981 to 82, the United States infected Cuba with dung fever. I mean, these are grotesque, demonic, monstrous war crimes. Cuba was dramatically affected, 345,000 cases of dengue fever, 158 dead. Interestingly, nobody in Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, the torture prisons, the torture camps in Guantanamo, nobody there got dengue fever, because all of the U.S. soldiers there, they got dengue fever vaccines before it happened. And they did it in January. They dropped the dengue fever mosquitoes on Cuba in January for maximum impact, because that's the breeding season for mosquitoes. That was in 1981-82. It had never been seen anywhere. This variant of dengue was from the West Pacific, and so it had never been seen. All of these many attacks on Cuba were always the first in the Western Hemisphere, because the United States was taking insects and viruses and bacteria from other parts of the world, weaponized them, and dropped them on Cuba, because knowing that the plants, animals, and humans would not have the built-in immunity from being exposed to them over generations. There was a swine outbreak, African swine fever outbreak, 1971, wiped out the entire Cuban herd, swine herd. 464,000 animals were slaughtered. They've used insects. This is where the Six-Legged Soldiers by Jeffrey Lockwood comes in. They dropped insects over Cuba to destroy their sugarcane, tobacco, and others. This was going also in the 80s. Up to 80% of their crops were lost. And you wonder why Cuba has a hard time getting ahead. It's really interesting. There was even an article in the San Francisco Chronicle, which is also on the Bioweapon Truth Commission, reported CIA involvement with African swine fever. I mean, they know it happened. It's open source knowledge. Former FBI official William Turner introduced some clarity to this issue by telling the Newsday newspaper that the CIA delivered a container of African swine fever from Fort Gulick in Panama and transferred it off the coast of Cuba to a fishing vessel. He precisely indicated the farm where this pathogen was introduced. Thank you, FBI official William Turner, for telling the truth. By the way, the Cubans have actually, I admire, no one else is helping the Cubans do this, but since the Cubans have filed a sort of a class action suit at the United Nations, thousands of Cuban nationals have filed a sort of a class action like suit with the United Nations. And so now the Russians are going to help the Cubans in their investigation and being a member of the Security Council, trying to get this exposed to the rest of the world, because no one's ever heard of it unless you do research like I did for the Bioweapon Truth Commission. That's slide number 3. Slide number 4, back to Ukraine. Oh my gosh, tularemia and TB outbreaks. There were, this is where they actually had tularemia, tuberculosis, and hepatitis outbreaks across Ukraine. Tularemia, J.B. East probably knows about tularemia because he grew up in rural Wisconsin, and I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. Tularemia is rabbit fever. It's carried by ticks and deer flies. I've been bitten by ticks and deer flies. Luckily, I never caught tularemia. It's a nasty disease. It's extremely rare. Only 1,000 cases in the United States a year, and it affects mainly, as you might guess, hunters and fishermen who are out in the open, walking in, and they get bitten by ticks or bitten by deer flies, and they can catch it. So they actually have weaponized tularemia. They have let me see right here, large scale since 2015, large scale financing of Ukrainian projects by the Pentagon. Numerous cases of infectious diseases have been recorded among servicemen and residents of Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics. This is where this is the areas that the Russians are liberating from the Ukrainian Nazis. Tularemia increased 9.5 times from 2007 to 2016. That's no accident. Tularemia is extremely rare. I mean, if there were 1,000 cases in the United States, there were probably just a handful, but that increased dramatically. Lots of evidence. And of course, J.B. East and I exposed the fact that the United States weaponized untreatable tuberculosis. They weaponized it and they put it on play money to give to children, Russian-speaking children, who would then, of course, put it in their mouths, catch tuberculosis, and there was a massive increase in tuberculosis among children. And then, of course, they would take the play money home, and the parents would take it away from the kids, and they would catch tuberculosis. U.S. tax dollars hard at work. Not only that, they have also made a connection with hepatitis A, highly infectious hepatitis A. They have noticed an extremely high correlation, more than 10,000 cases of hepatitis A in a country the size of Ukraine. I mean, are you kidding? And it just so happens that all of the hepatitis A outbreaks that happened in Ukraine from 2007 to 2017 up to now, all of them happened right next to a U.S. weapons of mass destruction bioweapon lab in Ukraine. There's a map that they show you of the 12 or 13 hepatitis A outbreaks, and the fact that they were all right next to U.S. bioweapon labs. That's slide number 4. Slide number 5, the training of Ukrainians. What the United States and the West does, it's not just the United States, all of NATO's involved. They all like to suck up to the United States and get a piece of the action and get contracts and get paid and get money. And we've already pointed out that the Germans and the Polish have already been signaled, pointed out by the Russians for doing bioweapon experiment development in Ukraine, hiding behind veterinary labs and supposedly rabies and foxes, but they've instead in the labs they found anthrax and diphtheria and COVID. What the United States does, it hides behind this Global Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. I don't think it should be called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. I think it should be called the Offensive Attack Augmentation Agency, because that's exactly what they do. This is like Orwellian double speak. Oh, we're protecting ourselves from potential bioweapon attacks, but it's the Americans that are doing all the bioweapon development. And so in 2015, the World Health Organization declared Ukraine a country with a high risk of polio outbreak, that it was really it should be a key disease that the Ukrainians must work against, to fight against. And yet, at the same time, of course, all of these WMD bioweapon labs are paid for by the Pentagon, the U.S. military, and run and financed by the U.S. military. The U.S. military is not out there to make brewer's yeast or yogurt culture. They are out there to produce biological arms to genocidally exterminate as many of their enemies as possible. And unfortunately for the West, that's just about everybody outside of NATO. The DTRA, this Defense Threat Reduction Agency, so-called, was the project manager was Brent Siegel. He will also likely be in absentia tried by the Russians for war crimes using bioweapons. And he actually said that that even though the World Health Organization said polio was a huge risk for Ukraine because it's a very poor, it's just it's not well run, it's corrupt, the sanitation is not good, etc. Even though that is what the World Health Organization said, Brent Siegel wrote the World Health Organization and said the Cooperative Biological Threat Reduction Program does not normally investigate diseases such as poliomyelitis. Well, he was a moment of clarity, a Freudian slip. Of course, they're not worried about poliomyelitis because they're producing anthrax and tuberculosis and diphtheria and COVID and tularemia, dysentery, cholera, all these other horrific diseases. Hepatitis, now we know about hepatitis A. And again, the slide shows they've got documents and documents and documents and documents showing all of this. Slide number 5. And now we're going, this is always fun. Hunter Biden. We just love Hunter Biden. The first one we did where we showed the nexus between Obama, Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton in the U.S. Senate from 2005 to 2008, and then the three of them in the Obama administration after 2008, guiding, financing, and actually being involved with the WMD bioweapon labs. As JB East pointed out, Obama was even photographed looking at anthrax samples in a lab in Ukraine. And so, my gosh. So they were all been involved, and then Department of State, Pentagon, CIA, USAID, Soros, Rockefeller, Gates. It just goes on and on and on. And so now, and Pfizer, and Moderna, and Eli Lilly, and all these military contractors are involved. We now have more details. I mean, this Hunter Biden, I didn't really pay much attention to him. I think JB East, has been following him more. I mean, he is like the organized crime Al Capone. He's a sex fiend. He's like Mozart's Figaro, and he's like Al Pacino and Scarface. He's a drug addict. It's like Joe Biden's son is like the Joker in Batman or some kind of a super criminal in a James Bond movie. He's unbelievable. So what they have found out is that not only they've gotten more details, but really Hunter Biden is like the nexus. And JB East always talks about, connecting the dots. That's how he was able to solve the war crime mysteries in World War II in the Pacific in his amazing book, Flyboys, which I read. You keep connecting the dots, and sometimes it can get very, very complex. But if you eventually, connect all the dots, you can solve the mystery like a good Sherlock Holmes. Hunter Biden is at the nexus of all of this. Of course, he's the son of Joe Biden. Did you know that his investment group, Rosemont Seneca, was named after the Rosemont farm of the Heinz family? Well, who are the Heinzes? John Kerry and the Heinz, ketchup and sauce. He's a billionaire. His son was one of the investment partners of Rosemont Seneca. Keep it in the family. Interestingly, Rosemont Seneca was removed from Wikipedia in April, just 2 months ago, as being not notable. Yet the one of the partners is the son of John Kerry, and the other guy is a guy named Archer. He and son Kerry were Yale University classmates, and Archer was convicted of securities fraud. Yeah, his name is Devin Archer. It just goes on and on and on. Hunter Biden invested in Metabiota. Also, Bill and Melinda Gates invested in Metabiota. They have, using the Biden laptop, which was discovered and which now even the Washington Post and the New York Times admit is true. There are emails of Hunter Biden. I will ask friends to contact the Ministry of Defense, but not openly. Is there anyone we can call in Washington to get an idea of how seriously Metabiota is being considered? So he was working, Hunter Biden invested in Metabiota and then used his influence, and Metabiota is one of the biggest kingpins for weapons of mass destruction, bioweapon development in Ukraine. We have raised 18% of the capital and made two investments, $250,000 in Metabiota and $577,000 in Advasil. Again, this is Hunter Biden up to his neck in Ukraine WMD bioarms. There's also not the Echo Health Alliance, which is another Orwellian doublespeak. Peter Daszak. It really should be called Echo Death, the Echo Death Alliance. It is up to its neck. Echo Health Alliance is closely affiliated with Anthony Fauci and the National Institutes of Health, the military National Institutes of Health. And also, so they were doing joint projects. The Gates were involved, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, DARPA, the U.S. Department of Defense Office and Advanced Studies, and again, the Russians in their evidentiary gathering of evidence will be presenting all of this to some legal scholars or some judges in order to, in an arraignment, in order to have the war crime trials. The last slide, number 7, is the Pentagon website statement on U.S. biological activities in the former Soviet Union, which I downloaded, and I will make it. It's going to be in the Bioweapon Truth Commission. It's supposed to be in support of, what the United States calls. The United States has also worked together to improve biosecurity in Ukraine by supporting 46 peaceful Ukrainian laboratories, medical facilities, and disease diagnostic sites over the past 2 decades. This is an official document called the fact sheet on WMD threat reduction efforts with Ukraine, Russia, and the other former Soviet Union countries. Of course, it should be fact sheet on WMD augmentation efforts. It's really interesting. They let something slip. That the Pentagon, after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, after the collapse, they said, we have brought in thousands of former Russian scientists specializing in biological weapons to exclude them from collaborating with terrorist groups. That's just like the United States, taking the kingpins, the top leaders of Unit 731 in China after 1945. Ishihiro and his gang, who killed hundreds of thousands of Chinese from 1935 to 1945 with bioweapons, and shipped them off with all of their 8,000 microscope slides and containers of documents to Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is now the hub of biological warfare and weapons of mass destruction in the world. This is again, the Russians are now at, and this is what they do in evidentiary. This is what they do during the evidentiary portion of a trial. They're asking questions. Why was the work commissioned by the Pentagon? They, was not reported to Congress, because what the Pentagon would do is they would hire the Metabiota and all of these other biological military contractors. And since it was the contractors that were doing it, then they had deniability, and they never had to report it to Congress. They're asking questions. Why were strains of pathogenic microorganisms, tuberculosis, tularemia, anthrax, COVID-19, and diphtheria, among others, why were they found in all of these labs, that were under Ukrainian and U.S. U.S. Department of State, U.S. Department of Defense control? Why do the U.S. and Ukraine obscure the military biological cooperation and international reports under the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, which the United States has signed, as has Ukraine, but of course the United States doesn't honor anything it signs if it's not in their interest. While the U.S. has been blocking the development of its verification mechanism since 2001, so the United States joined the Biological Weapon Convention when it was signed, I think in 1992, something like that, and yet they have done nothing but frustrate its ability to do its job around the world, because of course, who is doing all the biological WMD development? The United States, and secondarily NATO, and of course now Ukraine. So this is, it's all here. I've got everything. I will put all of this up, and the slides, and I will put up all of the information in the Biological Weapon, the Bioweapon Truth Commission. When you go in, it's free. Just click on Ukraine, and you'll see all of the information under Ukraine. And that, James, is my presentation today.
Well, folks, I promised you breaking news. Is that breaking news? Come on, the U.S. has weaponized Russian little target things to drop on Russians and kill them. And it's not in the Washington Post. It's not in the New York Times. You heard it here. It's breaking news. You answer the question. You look at the documents. Is this the dirtiest American war crime? And then ask yourself, if you're from, I don't know, I'm from Wisconsin. I'll use the example. If I'm from Wisconsin and Minnesota along the river there has weaponized diseases, but designed it for only Wisconsinites, not Minnesotans. Oh my God, we're going to get upset. So maybe we can understand why Mr. Putin wanted to at least get those labs. We promised you the breaking news, and Jeff, JB West, I'm JB East, saluting you.
Thank you.